We're gonna get into these dictators that fuck around and found out by America, right? And some of these dictators were executed under the Democrat regime. So it shouldn't be a whole bunch of this, that, and the third, because we knew, for sure we knew Barack Obama was involved with bin Laden's execution, but they never showed the body. They said they dumped the body overseas. We never seen the body, so we really can't believe that. But for sure we know Saddam Hussein and Muammar Gaddafi fuck around and found out how powerful the United States is. And we're gonna get into this video of former dictators that fuck around and found out.
Hussein promised glory, but instead ruled Iraq with fear and brutal force. When he finally fell, the world didn't just want him removed. His execution wasn't just a legal decision. It was a message designed to be seen by millions.
Across the world.
How it happened was even darker and personal than most people ever realized.
And they're celebrating.
Saddam Hussein was born on April 28, 1937, in the small village of Al-Auja near Tikrit. The Iraq he was born into was not stable at all. Governments were changing fast, leaders were being overthrown, and different groups were fighting for power. There were constant arguments inside the army and political circles. As a child, Saddam saw a country where violence and fear were normal parts of daily life. This environment shaped the way he looked at power and control. He left his village while he was still young and moved to Baghdad hoping for a better future. But the capital was also filled with tension. Political groups were rising, and many of them believed the only way to gain control was through force. Saddam was drawn to this world. By the late 1950s, he joined the Ba'ath Party, a group that talked about strong leadership, Arab pride, and creating a modern state. For Saddam, the Ba'ath Party was more than politics. It was a path to influence. He liked how the party operated in secret and how it valued loyalty above everything. The big turning point came in July 1968, when the Ba'ath Party carried out a successful coup and took control of Iraq. Saddam was still young, only in his early 30s, but he stood out. He knew how to build alliances, and he knew how to remove anyone who got between him and more power. Very quickly, he became vice president under Ahmed Hassan al-Bakr. Many officials noticed that Saddam was the real force guiding decisions. He handled security, intelligence, and internal threats, which gave him control over the country without officially being the leader. In July 1979, he made his final move. Al-Bakr stepped down, and Saddam became the president of Iraq. The moment he took office, he began reshaping the entire state to fit his vision. Iraq's military grew rapidly. Intelligence agencies multiplied. These agencies watched citizens, tracked enemies, and made sure no one could challenge him. Saddam filled important positions with people from his hometown and his own Tikriti clan because he trusted them the most. He wanted a government that answered only to
Same
him.
motherfuckers that backstabbed
By
him
the
was the
early
ones he
1980s,
trusted.
Saddam had full control over Iraq.
If Saddam knew
Every
the
major decision went through him,
logo of trust
whether
no
it was
one,
about the economy,
he would
oil
still be
production,
here.
foreign policy, or security.
A bunch of them leaders would be
He
here.
believed fear
They
was
went
a
off
tool
that
that
motto,
kept people
trust
in
no
line,
one.
and he used it constantly. His rise created a leadership style that depended on absolute power and total loyalty. But this rise also created pressure, enemies, and expectations. And soon, Saddam's hunger for strength would push him into a conflict that drained his country and weakened everything he built. In September 1980, he ordered Iraqi forces to invade Iran. He believed Iran was in chaos after the 1979 revolution that had overthrown the Shah. Iran's government was still settling in, and its military was recovering from purges. Saddam saw an opportunity. He wanted to control disputed border areas, especially around the Shat al-Arab waterway.
You've been pillaging the village. Now it's time to purge your ass.
Saddam and his generals thought the war would end in a few weeks or months, but Iran resisted with everything it had. What started as a quick attack turned into an 8-year conflict that lasted from 1980 to 88. It became one of the longest conventional wars of the 20th century. Entire cities near the border were destroyed. Young men from both countries were sent to the front lines in massive numbers. By the end, more than 500,000 soldiers from both sides were killed, and many more were injured or went missing. Civilians also suffered from airstrikes, shortages, and displacement. Iraq spent enormous amounts of money trying to keep the war going. The country bought weapons, ammunition, vehicles, and supplies from around the world. The United States shared intelligence with Iraq because it did not want Iran's new revolutionary government gaining more power. The Soviet Union sold Iraq large quantities of weapons. France supplied aircraft and equipment. Several Gulf states,
everybody that was
including
involved,
Saudi
right?
Arabia and Kuwait, loaned Iraq billions of dollars to help it continue fighting Iran.
Billions
With all
of
the
dollars.
support behind him, Saddam believed he was too important to fail. He felt these countries would back him no matter what. But as the years passed, the war
Fucking
drained
around and
Iraq's
found out
economy.
that he
Oil
couldn't
exports
trust
dropped.
none of them goddamn
Infrastructure crumbled.
motherfuckers.
Public services struggled. When the war finally ended in August 1988, Iraq was far weaker than when it began. The country's debt was massive. Kuwait alone was owed more than $10 billion. Saddam asked Kuwait to forgive the loans because he said Iraq had protected the region by fighting Iran. Kuwait refused. They wanted their money back because their own economy depended on it. That refusal pushed Saddam into anger and desperation. He saw it as a betrayal from a neighbor he thought should support him, and this tension began to grow into something far more dangerous. The Iran-Iraq war didn't just damage Iraq financially. It damaged Saddam's reputation inside the region and weakened the confidence people once had in him. This pressure, combined with the heavy debt, set the stage for his next major decision. On August 2nd, 1990, Iraq crossed into Kuwait before sunrise. The attack moved fast because Kuwait's army was small and not prepared for a sudden assault. Within a few hours, Iraqi troops reached Kuwait City. By the end of the day, Saddam's forces controlled the entire country. The invasion shocked governments around the world because Kuwait was wealthy, close to major oil routes, and had strong ties to the United States, the United Kingdom, and Saudi Arabia. Saddam publicly said Kuwait was lowering oil prices on purpose and drilling into Iraqi oil fields along the border. He claimed these actions were hurting Iraq's already damaged economy after the Iran-Iraq war. But most countries believed Saddam simply wanted Kuwait's wealth, oil fields, and coastline on the Persian Gulf. Many world leaders feared he might attack Saudi Arabia next, which would put even more global oil at risk. The international response was immediate. On the same day as the invasion, the United States Security Council condemned Iraq's actions. The United States began sending forces to Saudi Arabia within days. Soon, dozens of nations joined what became the largest military coalition since World War II. Countries like the United Kingdom, France, Egypt, Canada, and Australia all sent troops or support. By January 1991, the coalition had built up more than 600,000 troops in the region. On January 17, 1991, the coalition launched a massive air campaign known as Operation Desert Storm. For weeks, coalition aircraft targeted Iraqi command centers, communication lines, and military bases. The airstrikes destroyed much of Iraq's equipment before the ground forces even moved in. When the ground assault began on February 24th, it lasted only 100 hours. The Iraqi army, which had been considered one of the strongest in the Middle East during the 1980s, could not withstand the pressure. Tens of thousands of Iraqi soldiers surrendered. Others fled toward Basra in long lines that were struck repeatedly from the air. By February 28th, Kuwait was fully liberated. Iraq's defeat led to strict United Nations sanctions. These sanctions blocked many imports and limited for food program. Factories shut down. Hospitals struggled. Electricity was unreliable. The dinar collapsed in value. In many towns, basic items like powdered milk, soap, and antibiotics became luxury goods. The people paid the price, not the government. Inside Iraq, frustration grew. Uprisings broke out in the north and south in 1991, especially among Kurds and Shia communities. Saddam crushed these rebellions with brutal force, using elite units like the Republican Guard. His control remained, but the world now saw him as a leader who caused instability far beyond his own borders. This shift was important. For years, some Western governments had tolerated Saddam because he opposed Iran. But after Kuwait, that view changed. He was now seen as unpredictable, aggressive, and willing to start wars that could pull the whole region into chaos. And although he survived the 1990s, the invasion of Kuwait had already planted the seed for his final defeat. On March 20th, 2003, the United States and the United Kingdom began their invasion of Iraq. The operation started with airstrikes on Baghdad, aimed at what American intelligence believed were locations linked to Saddam and his top commanders. President George W. Bush and Prime Minister Tony Blair argued that Iraq held weapons of mass destruction and posed a threat. Other countries joined the invasion as
So President Bush was the president at the time. They invaded Iraq. This was behind his dad, George Bush Sr. He was president and he was going through it with Saddam and Muammar Gaddafi. And like I said, when Obama became president, he became a puppet and finished their dirty work. And he got blood on his hands for doing the work of his slave master puppets. The puppet master at that point was George Bush Jr. and George Bush Sr. was the puppet master over Barack Obama. Facts.
well, including Australia and Poland. Even though no weapons were found later, the attack continued at full speed. Coalition ground forces.
There was no weapons of mass destruction when Bush Jr. invaded Iraq. Let's go.
Moved into southern Iraq from Kuwait and advanced toward Baghdad. Cities like Basra, Najaf, and Karbala saw heavy fighting. Iraqi units tried to defend, but years of sanctions, lack of training, and poor equipment left them too weak to hold back a modern military force. By April, coalition troops were already on the outskirts of Baghdad. On April 9, 2003, American forces entered central Baghdad. The Iraqi government simply collapsed. Offices were abandoned. Commanders disappeared. The capital fell faster than many expected. Crowds gathered in Firdos Square as a large statue of Saddam was pulled down, showing symbolically that his rule was finished. But Saddam himself was nowhere to be seen. For months he stayed hidden.
In a hole, like a
He
rat.
moved between safe houses around Tikrit, Samara, and the villages along the Tigris River. U.S. forces searched for him under Operation Red Dawn, a mission designed to track him through old contacts, family ties, and tribal networks. Dozens of raids were carried out. Slowly, intelligence gathered clues, especially from people loyal to him who were arrested and questioned.
See that?
The breakthrough came on December 13, 2003, near the town of Ad-Dawr, just south of Tikrit. Soldiers from the 4th Infantry Division and Special Operations Units found Saddam hiding in a small underground hole on a farm. The hideout was narrow, cramped,
Or that motherfucker out like a goddamn groundhog.
Inside were some clothes, a pistol, and a few $1,000s. On June 2004, he was handed over to the Iraqi interim government after months in American custody. This handover
His
meant
own
Iraq
peoples,
itself
y'all.
would judge him.
His own people's
He
judged
faced
him.
several major charges.
His some of them was his number one men.
Running torture centers, and ordering mass killings. There were many possible cases to choose from, but prosecutors focused on one that was the most straightforward: the Dujail case. The Dujail story went back to 1982. Saddam had visited the Shia town after Iran invaded Iraq. During the visit, gunmen linked to the Dawa party tried to assassinate him. Saddam survived, but his response was brutal. Security forces arrested around 148 men and boys.
Executed
Many
all
as
of them.
young as teenagers. They were tortured, executed, or disappeared. Homes were bulldozed, farmland was destroyed. Families were scattered. Because so many documents survived, including official orders and lists of the detainees, this case was easier to prove than larger events like the Anfal campaign. The trial started on October 19th, 2005. It was messy from the beginning.
Very messy.
One judge resigned out of fear. Another was removed. 3 defense lawyers were targeted, and at least 2 were murdered by insurgents who saw the trial as a threat or a symbol. Saddam tried to delay things by shouting, arguing, and refusing to recognize the court. Even so, the testimony continued. Survivors described arrests, torture, and executions. Papers from Saddam's own intelligence agencies showed signatures, dates, and orders that tied directly back to him.
Damn.
On November 5th, 2006, after months of hearings, the court announced its ruling. Saddam was found guilty and sentenced to death by hanging. But what happened next was unusual. In late 2006, Iraq was breaking apart. Every week brought new bombings. Shia and Sunni militias fought openly in the streets. Thousands were dying every month. Prime Minister Nouri al-Maliki's government was weak, new, and struggling to gain trust. To many Shia families, Saddam wasn't just a dictator. He was the man tied to torture chambers in Basra, the mass graves in the south, and the executions of Shia clerics. For them, watching him face justice felt like the closing of a long and painful chapter. But the government wanted to show strength. They needed to prove they were the ones making decisions in the new Iraq, not the Americans. A filmed execution could help them do that. It would show that Saddam was truly defeated, and that the era of fear had ended. The United States had its own goals. They wanted the world to see a clear ending to Saddam's rule. U.S. commanders worried that if Saddam died quietly or out of view, insurgents might turn him into a symbol. A recorded execution made that less likely. This combination of revenge, politics, and messaging pushed everyone toward the idea of a public hanging. Saddam's appeal process ended on December 26, 2006. According to Iraqi law, an execution had to take place within 30 days after the final verdict. But officials did not wait long. They picked December 30th, 2006, just 4 days later. This date was important. It fell during Eid al-Adha, one of the biggest holidays in Islam. For Sunnis, it was the first day of Eid. For Shias, it was the second. Carrying out the execution during a sacred holiday was a strong testament. It showed the government was unwilling to delay, even for religious tradition.
It was on Ramadan, y'all, when they executed him.
At that time, Saddam was still held by American forces because they feared an attack if he were moved too early. But on the morning of December 30th at around 6 a.m., the United States handed him over to the Iraqi guards. This happened at Camp Victory, a large U.S. base near Baghdad International Airport. Once the handover was complete, the countdown was over. The final steps toward the execution had officially begun. The official reason for recording the execution was that the Iraqi government wanted a clear legal record. They said it was for documentation, so nobody could argue later about what happened. But there was also another reason that everyone understood, even if it was not written in any report. They wanted people to see the end of a man who ruled Iraq through fear, prisons, and violence for more than 2 decades. When Saddam was brought to the execution room, several Iraqi officials came prepared with their own devices. Some carried small cameras that could fit in one hand. Others had early model mobile phones that could record short videos. One of the guards held his phone low and filmed secretly. The government had not planned for a broadcast, but they did allow cameras inside because they knew the footage might be needed later. Their goal was simple. For years, rumors had surrounded Saddam. Even after his capture in 2003, many Iraqis believed he might escape or that the Americans would protect him. The government wanted to end all that talk. A recorded execution meant no one could say he survived or was replaced by a body double. It was proof that the trial had reached its final step. Early in the morning, Saddam was led into the chamber. The guards confirmed his identity. They checked the rope. They read out the legal orders. At exactly 6:06 a.m., the sentence was carried out. Within hours, the footage reached television screens, websites, and mobile phones across the world. Millions saw it. The video ended the speculation, but it also opened a new chapter filled with anger, debate, and shock. They remembered how he survived wars, rebellions, and assassination attempts. Some thought he might return the same way he had returned from previous crises. In a country full of rumors and fear, anything seemed possible. But the public execution removed the mystery. It showed clearly that Saddam was no longer part of Iraq's future. It also sent a signal to insurgent groups that the old regime was not coming back. The new authorities believed that the only way to erase decades of fear was to end him in a way that everyone could see and understand. They wanted to show he had no power left, not even in his final moments. Many hoped that Saddam's death would calm Iraq, but the opposite happened. In 2007, the violence grew even worse. Different groups used the execution for their own political gains. Some Shia militias celebrated it. Some Sunni groups used it to recruit more fighters. Bombings, kidnappings, and street battles increased almost everywhere. The United States responded by sending around 30,000 extra soldiers in what became known as the Surge. Saddam was buried the next day, on December 31st, 2006, in his hometown of Al-Awjah. His family was allowed to attend, but under heavy security. In the years that followed, supporters continued to visit his grave, showing that his influence had not disappeared completely, even though he was gone. What no one predicted was how fast the video would move. It spread across news channels, websites, and personal phones in almost every country. Even today, it remains one of the most watched political execution videos ever recorded. It changed how people remembered Saddam and how they viewed the Iraq War. And it became a reminder that even the end of a dictator can reshape a region for years to come.
Now we're going to get into the execution of Muammar Gaddafi, another dictator in those foreign countries, behind the United States of America. Fuck around and find out.
Brandished a golden pistol he said he'd taken from Gaddafi.
This is a golden gun that Gaddafi tried to defend himself with in his last days on Earth. The Libyan dictator was assassinated on camera, paraded through the streets, and declared a villain of history. Most people think Gaddafi was just a power-hungry madman who deserved what he got. But what if I told you that same madman gave Libyans free education, free healthcare, and the highest standard of living in Africa? But if you follow the money trail after his death, a far more sinister picture emerges. One where Western powers gained, Africa lost, and Libya fell apart. Stick around, because the version of Gaddafi you've been told might be the biggest lie of the 21st century, and that lie benefited only those who helped spread it. Chapter 1: Death of a Tyrant. When Gaddafi died in that dusty ditch outside Sirte, the headlines called it a liberation. A tyrant was gone. The people were free. Democracy, they said, was finally coming to Libya. But here's the thing. If you follow the money, the story starts to smell different. In the weeks after his death, foreign oil companies rushed back into Libya like it was Black Friday. France's Total, Italy's Eni, the UK's BP, they all made quiet, strategic moves. Billions in contracts suddenly unfroze. Deals were renegotiated. And just like that, Libya's oil, 1.6 million barrels a day, was flowing to new hands. Funny how that works. Right. Then there's the gold. Gaddafi's hoard, 143 tons of it, vanished. No receipts,
Damn.
No trails. Just
stole that man's
gone.
shit.
Some say it was smuggled out. Others whisper that it was seized. But not a single
Where
official ever gave a straight answer about where that gold ended up.
Yeah, where all his gold at?
From it. Behind the scenes, Qatar
who profited from his gold?
Arming rebel groups and influencing the new power structure. France, we now know, was desperate to assert itself in North Africa and was allegedly afraid Gaddafi's gold dinar plan would undermine the CFA franc, France's economic grip on its former colonies. Emails from Hillary Clinton's server later revealed a cocktail of motives: oil, gold, influence, and Yes,
You hear that?
control over Africa's financial future.
That's what they want.
One line even
That's what the
referred
American
to
people
a
wanted.
threat to the stability of the
Hillary?
international monetary system.
Who was the
But here's the
president
twist.
at that
Libya
time?
didn't get stability. It got chaos, civil war, warlords, slave markets, and foreign troops fighting proxy battles on Libyan soil. So how did one man, raised in a tent, ascend the throne of Libya and bring stability to the country? Before we move on to the next section, please don't forget to subscribe if you liked the video so far. Chapter 2, Tents to Thrones. Before he became one of the most feared and flamboyant dictators in the world, Muammar Gaddafi was just a barefoot boy from the desert. Born in 1942 in a tent near the Libyan town of Sirte, he grew up herding goats with no electricity, no running water, and barely any formal education. His father was an illiterate Bedouin nomad, but young Muammar had big dreams and a serious grudge against colonial powers. Libya, at the time, had just shaken off Italian rule and was now under the shaky leadership of King Idris, a monarch many saw as more loyal to foreign oil companies than his own people. Gaddafi joined the military in his early 20s and climbed the ranks with quiet ambition and loud ideas. He devoured books on Nasser's pan-Arabism and plot.
So as we know, Barack Obama was the president when Muammar Gaddafi was executed, and he also was the president when allegedly bin Laden was executed, but they never showed the body of bin Laden. They said they dumped his body over the seas, but why not show the American people and people across the world that bin Laden was assassinated or unalived? So we really can't believe it until we see it. All that we know, bin Laden is still alive. Why would they execute Muammar Gaddafi and Saddam Hussein live so the peoples can see it, but hide and hinder bin Laden? Let's go. And we all know Hillary was involved. She was another lab puppy in Obama's ear, pulling his strings. Let's go.
Influencing the new power structure. France, we now know, was desperate to assert itself in North Africa and was allegedly afraid Gaddafi's gold dinar plan would undermine the CFA franc, France's economic grip on its former colonies. Emails from Hillary Clinton's server later revealed a cocktail of motives: oil, gold, influence, and, yes, control over Africa's financial future. One line even referred to a threat to the stability of the international monetary system.
From Hillary Clinton. I had her 2 cents in that shit too.
But here's the twist. Libya didn't get stability. It got chaos, civil war, warlords, slave markets, and foreign troops fighting proxy battles on Libyan soil. So how did one man, raised in a tent, ascend the throne of Libya and bring stability to the country? Before we move on to the next section, please don't forget to subscribe if you liked the video so far. Chapter 2, Tents to Thrones. Before he became one of the most feared and flamboyant dictators in the world, Muammar Gaddafi was just a barefoot boy from the desert. Born in 1942 in a tent near the Libyan town of Sirte, he grew up herding goats with no electricity, no running water, and barely any formal education. His father was an illiterate Bedouin nomad, but young Muammar had big dreams and a serious grudge against colonial powers. Libya, at the time, had just shaken off Italian rule and was now under the shaky leadership of King Idris, a monarch many saw as more loyal to foreign oil companies than his own people. Gaddafi joined the military in his early 20s and climbed the ranks with quiet ambition and loud ideas. He devoured books on Nasser's pan-Arabism and plotted revolution while still in uniform. Then, at just 27 years old, 27, he pulled off a bloodless coup in 1969, toppling King Idris while the monarch was conveniently out of the country getting medical treatment. The world barely blinked. Libya back then wasn't on many radars, but that was about to change. Gaddafi didn't just want to rule, he wanted to reinvent Libya. He styled himself as a man of the people. No fancy palaces, no then wasn't on many radars. But that was about to change. Gaddafi didn't just want to rule, he wanted to reinvent Libya. He styled himself as a man of the people. No fancy palaces, no official title. Just brother leader living in a tent, supposedly closer to his roots. But don't let the humble branding fool you.
Наверное, здесь тоже никогда не бывало в палатке медведской. А так это оно.
Behind that canvas was a man who quickly took control of the army, the media, the oil, and the narrative. He banned political parties, imprisoned dissidents, and silenced critics. Yet, to many in the Arab world, he was a revolutionary hero, challenging Western imperialism and calling for unity among Arab nations. So, how did a goat-herding desert kid become the kingmaker of North Africa and manage to cling to power for over 40 years? And why did the world let him? That's where it gets interesting. Chapter 3, Power and Oil. After taking power, Gaddafi did something that made oil giants sweat bullets. He kicked them out. In the early 1970s, he nationalized Libya's oil industry, tearing up contracts with companies like BP and Exxon and telling them to take a hike. Suddenly, 100% of Libya's oil profits stayed in Libya, and just like that, the country went from sand and camels to cash and skyscrapers. By the 1980s, Libya had the highest GDP per capita in Africa, more than $11,000 per person at its peak, thanks to its massive oil reserves, which still rank in the top 10 globally. But Gaddafi didn't just want money, he wanted legacy, and so came the Green Book. Think of it as part political manifesto, part fever dream, part bedtime story, written entirely by Gaddafi himself. It rejected capitalism, rejected communism, and pitched something called Jamahiriya, which means state of the masses. In theory, it meant no politicians, no corruption, and people directly running the country through local councils. In practice, Gaddafi was still calling every shot, just without a formal title. Clever, no? To the outside world, Libya looked like a model for progress. Education was free. Healthcare, also free. The literacy rate, once just 10%, shot up to over 80%. Women were going to university, roads, airports, housing.
These are all Muslim countries, right? Wasn't Barack Obama allegedly supposed to be a Muslim and killing his own Muslim brothers? Under the same flag of Allah? Very interesting, ladies and gentlemen. Very interesting.
Everything boomed. But here's the thing. All that progress came with a warning label. Speak against the regime and you might just disappear. Gaddafi had a network of spies, secret prisons, and even created special revolutionary committees to root out enemies of the state. He plastered his face on every billboard, dressed in wild military outfits, and gave speeches that ran longer than a Netflix binge. And yet, despite the weirdness, the violence, and the dictatorship, the West still shook his hand.
Look at that old house.
Why? Maybe it had something to do with oil. Or maybe there was something else hiding beneath Libya's glitzy surface.
That nigga strings was being pulled.
We'll get there. Chapter 4, Global Disruptor. If Gaddafi ruled Libya like a king, he played on the world stage like a chaos dealer. In the 70s and 80s, he didn't just want to lead a country, he wanted to reshape the planet. He poured millions, some say billions, into rebel groups, militant networks, and anti-colonial movements across the globe. From the IRA in Ireland to the Black Panthers in the US, and even rebels in Chad, Gaddafi was writing checks and sending weapons like it was a global shopping spree for
See, now you heard that. He also funded Louis Farrakhan. I said he also funded Louis Farrakhan with millions of dollars, brothers and sisters.
Revolution. His goal? Break Western dominance, one uprising at a time. But he wasn't just funding rebels, he was dreaming bigger. Gaddafi wanted to unite all of Africa under one flag, one military, and one currency backed by gold. Yep, real gold. He proposed ditching the US dollar and euro, for a Pan-African dinar made from Africa's vast gold reserves. That would have meant serious trouble for global powers who liked having Africa as a resource supplier, not a financial powerhouse. Naturally, the West wasn't thrilled. Then came the
Wasn't going for that
1988
shit.
Lockerbie bombing. A Pan Am flight over Scotland exploded, killing 270 people. All fingers pointed to Libyan agents. Sanctions slammed Libya. Gaddafi became a global villain. But here's where the story takes a weird turn. After 9/11, Gaddafi tried to clean up. He handed over Lockerbie's suspects, paid out $2.7 billion in compensation, and even ditched his weapons of mass destruction program. George W. Bush and Tony Blair gave him a temporary hall pass. Libya reopened for business.
How could George Bush Jr. give him a pass when he wasn't even the president? So it goes to show you, ladies and gentlemen, they were really pulling the strings on that old house nigga, Barack Obama, because he was the president in 2011 when all this took place. Let's go.
For a hot second, Gaddafi was sipping espresso with European leaders and smiling in photo ops. But that
Smiling and
detente didn't
beguiling.
last. As his gold-backed dreams grew louder and his oil deals grew more selective, old tensions boiled over. So what flipped the switch again? Who decided Gaddafi had outlived his usefulness? You'll want to hear what happened next. It wasn't just about politics. It was about power. Want to understand the world better? Start with history and subscribe to our channel. Chapter 5, Revolution or Regime Change. By 2011, the world was on fire. The Arab Spring had started sweeping across North Africa and the Middle East like a political wildfire. Tunisia fell, Egypt followed, and suddenly, all eyes were on Libya. After 42 years of Gaddafi's rule, protests erupted in Benghazi. At first it looked like just another uprising, but this one had teeth, and soon, tanks. Gaddafi didn't exactly play it cool. He called the protesters rats, threatened to hunt them down house by house, and launched military crackdowns that shocked the world. But here's where things got murky. Almost overnight, a rebel force appeared. Badly organized, lightly armed, but oddly well-connected. NATO got involved fast. By March 2011, the UN approved a no-fly zone, and NATO began bombing Gaddafi's military under the banner of humanitarian intervention. But was it really just about protecting civilians, or was something else on the table? Leaked Hillary Clinton emails revealed France had 5 motives for pushing the Libya war. One of them, Gaddafi's 143 tons of
and
gold,
oil.
and a plan to introduce a Pan-African currency. The kind of idea that gives central banks heartburn. Libya also had the largest oil reserves in Africa, producing nearly 1.6 million barrels a day.
Damn.
That's a lot of leverage,
Fucking
if you're
right.
sitting on it. As Tripoli fell, Gaddafi fled. For weeks he hid near his hometown of Sirte, still clutching a golden pistol. Then, on October 20th, 2011, he was captured by rebels in a drainage pipe and beaten to death on camera.
And they dragged him through
No
the
trial.
city.
No
trial.
real answers.
None of that shit.
Just a gruesome end for a man who once dreamed of ruling Africa. Was Gaddafi a brutal dictator who got what he deserved, or a visionary leader who was taken out because he challenged Western power? Let us know in the comments below. Here's another video history buffs enjoyed watching. Bye for now.
Tonight, I can report to the American people and to the world that the United States has conducted an operation that killed Osama bin Laden, the leader of Al-Qaeda, and a terrorist who's responsible for the murder of thousands of innocent men, women, and children. It was nearly 10 years ago that a bright September day was darkened by the worst attack on the American people in our history. The images of 9/11 are seared into our national memory. Hijacked planes cutting through a cloudless September sky, the Twin Towers collapsing to the ground, black smoke billowing up from the Pentagon, the wreckage of Flight 93 in Shanksville, Pennsylvania, where the actions of heroic citizens saved even more heartbreak and destruction. And yet we know that the worst images are those that were unseen to the world. The empty seat at the dinner table,
Nigga strings was being pulled here, ladies and gentlemen. The house Negro strings were being pulled.
Children who were forced to grow up without their mother or their father. Parents who would never know the feeling of their child's embrace. Nearly 3,000 citizens taken from us, leaving a gaping hole in our hearts. On September 11th, 2001, in our time of grief, the American people came together. We offered our neighbors a hand, and we offered the wounded our blood. We reaffirmed our ties to each other and our love of community and country. On that day, no matter where we came from, what God we prayed to, or what race or ethnicity we were united as one American family. We were also united in our resolve to protect our nation and to bring those who committed this vicious attack to justice.
Was the most wanted face of terrorism.
Shortly after taking office, I directed Leon Panetta.
Obama gave the order to kill Osama bin Laden, the most dangerous terrorist known in America and the world over. After a gruesome...
One of his Muslim brothers, right? Isn't Barack Obama Muslim, ladies and gentlemen? He done executed two of his Muslim brothers. And his strings was being pulled to do it. Wow, he got an answer to that, right?
Mission, they took out the leader of Al-Qaeda. But what they didn't know was the gruesome events that would unfold after his death.
Disclaimer, YouTube.
Chapter
Disclaimer,
1,
YouTube.
The Devil's Den.
Educational
In the
purposes
early hours
only.
of May 2nd, 2011, two modified Black Hawk helicopters quietly crossed the Pakistani border, flying low to avoid radar detection. Their mission was clear, but dangerous: to infiltrate the heavily fortified compound in Abbottabad and capture or kill Osama bin Laden. The operation was the result of years of planning and intelligence work, but nothing could prepare the SEAL Team's 6 operators for what awaited them.
While attempting to hover, the pilot loses control and nosedives into the central courtyard. The tail of the aircraft breaks into 2.
As they approached the compound, disaster struck. One of the helicopters suddenly lost lift and crashed into the courtyard. The pilot and crew narrowly escaped injury, but the crash forced the SEALs to quickly regroup and adjust their plan on the fly.
Helicopters used in the operation could still be seen.
Despite the unexpected setback, the team pushed forward with incredible discipline and resolve. The SEALs breached the compound's gates and moved swiftly, clearing the compound floor by floor. The raid unfolded in just 40 minutes, but within that time, the chaos was intense. Gunfire erupted, echoing through the narrow corridors. Women and children living in the compound were caught in the confusion, with some being treated with caution by the SEALs to avoid unnecessary harm. On the top floor, the target was found. Osama bin Laden was reportedly hiding in a small room, armed and ready to fight. The SEALs shot him in the head and chest, with the fatal shot entering above his left eye. The moment marked the end of a decade-long manhunt for the world's most wanted terrorist. Shortly after the kill, the operation leader radioed back to base with the now famous code phrase, Geronimo EKIA, enemy killed in action. The success of the mission was a historic moment for the United States and the world, signaling the death of the mastermind behind 9/11. The operation wasn't without controversy. Questions about the Pakistan government's awareness and the decision to bury bin Laden at sea would arise later. But on that night, the mission was clear, and the target was eliminated. But this mission set the stage for something darker, and it all started on a sunny September morning in New York City.
In a second, that looks like a good-sized plane came in and hit the World Trade Center from the other side. So this is obviously, or would seem to be, and again, I'm dealing in speculation.
Chapter 2, The Ghost of 9/11. On the morning of September 11th, 2001, 19 Al-Qaeda terrorists hijacked 4 planes. 2 jets were deliberately flown into the Twin Towers of the World Trade Center in New York, 1 into the Pentagon, and a 4th crashed in Pennsylvania. The attacks claimed the lives of 2,996 people, including the 19 hijackers, making it the deadliest terror act in history. It was a moment that shattered the American sense of safety and marked a turning point, comparable only to Pearl Harbor in its national trauma. Beyond the physical toll, the mental scars ran deep. Roughly 20% of those directly exposed to ground zero still showed PTSD symptoms 5 to 6 years later, 4 times higher than in the general population. Even today, thousands of first responders face chronic illnesses tied to that day. By 2018, nearly 10,000 had cancer, and over 2,000 more deaths are attributed to 9/11-linked conditions. Amid this chaos, Osama bin Laden emerged as the face of terror. He founded Al-Qaeda, masterminded 9/11, and became the world's most wanted man.
So I'm asking, the question is why his execution couldn't have been broadcast like Muammar Gaddafi's and Saddam Hussein. Makes me wonder.
U.S. mounted a vast, nearly 10-year-long manhunt, fueled by hundreds of CIA operatives, military assets, and a $50 million reward. This event set the emotional and factual stage for the biggest manhunt in U.S. history. Before we move on to the next section, please don't forget to subscribe if you liked the video so far. Chapter 3, Vanishing Man. After 9/11, bin Laden vanished. He used no phones, no internet, and stopped sending public messages. By 2002, U.S. analysts realized he was avoiding any electronic footprint, knowing his phone calls or internet use could easily lead to drone strikes. Instead, American intelligence had to change tactic. They began following the people around him. The breakthrough came through the name Abu Ahmed al-Kuwaiti, a courier so trusted he was called bin Laden's favorite courier and right-hand man. In 2002, a detainee held abroad gave U.S. officials this alias. Then in 2004, Hassan Ghul, captured and held at CIA custody, confirmed al-Kuwaiti's close relationship to bin Laden and his key messaging role. Yet even with that alias, his real identity was a mystery. It wasn't until around 2007 that analysts discovered his real name, later revealed as Ibrahim Saeed Ahmed, also known as Arshad Khan, and confirmed he lived in Pakistan. Now equipped with a name, the CIA and NSA ramped up traditional surveillance, wiretaps, phone metadata, and NSA intercepts. In mid-2010, Ahmed made a critical mistake. He called someone under NSA surveillance. That connection allowed CIA teams in the field to track his vehicle from Peshawar to a compound in Abbottabad, just 40 miles north of Islamabad. From that point, it was a matter of satellite photos, human informants, and painstaking analysis of travel routines and high walls. They watched him come and go, confirming there was someone significant inside, someone who turned out to be bin Laden. Chapter 4, The Compound.
According to satellite photos provided by the U.S. military. On Tuesday, local residents and journalists were roaming the outside of the compound.
In 2010, after years of tracking his couriers, the CIA zeroed in on a compound in the city of Abbottabad, Pakistan. Located about 40 miles north of Islamabad, the compound immediately raised red flags. It was surrounded by 12 to 18-foot high walls topped with barbed wire, unusually tall and fortified for a normal home. The residents took extreme measures to avoid detection. There were no internet or phone lines coming in or out, no visitors allowed, and the windows were covered with heavy screens to block any view. Surveillance teams watched the compound for months, but could never get clear, close-up images of who lived inside. The tall man seen walking the yard caught their attention. He was never filmed face-on, only glimpsed from a distance, making his identification difficult. The man appeared to live a very controlled, secretive life, unlike any typical local resident. Despite intense monitoring, no definitive proof showed that bin Laden was inside.
Connected by a bundle of bare cables to a satellite receiver. The government did not release the audio of the home movie, but bin Laden is watching a broadcast of one of al-Qaeda's many terror messages.
Intelligence officers often said, "We don't have proof it's bin Laden, but who else lives like this?" The level of security and secrecy was almost unheard of in the area. The compound covered roughly 12,000 square feet with an internal courtyard, and its design suggested someone was trying to avoid all electronic tracking or physical spying. This eerie silence, combined with the extreme isolation, convinced the CIA that this was not just any house. It was a fortress hiding a high-value target. The world's most wanted man might be hiding right behind those walls, safe for now, but vulnerable to discovery. Chapter 5, Obama's Green Light.
When the president walked into this little conference room, there was a brigadier general sitting at the...
All of them in that picture. Y'all see that? Hold on. There it is there. Look at that nigga. Strings being pulled. Look at Killery. Look at Killery over here. I mean, that's how you know all these motherfuckers in the bed together, y'all. The Democrats. She looking like she shocked. You ain't shocked. You also had something to do with Muammar Gaddafi execution. Huh?
This little conference room, and there was a brigadier general sitting at the...
When the CIA finally identified the Abbottabad compound as the likely hideout of Osama bin
live,
Laden,
y'all.
President Barack Obama...
They was watching it live, y'all, like if you was watching a Netflix show. You heard?
Obama faced one of the most critical decisions of his presidency. He had two stark options: launch an airstrike and bomb the compound from afar, or send in American troops to capture or kill bin Laden directly. Both choices carried immense risks. A bombing could kill civilians, inflame anti-American sentiment, and leave doubts about bin Laden's fate. Sending in SEAL Team 6 meant risking the lives of elite soldiers deep inside Pakistani territory, potentially triggering a diplomatic crisis if things went wrong. After intense briefings and deliberations with his national security...
Who that, y'all? Who that? Right there. Huh? Who that? Biden? They all had their hand in the cookie jar, huh?
Security team, Obama gave the green light for a covert helicopter raid. The mission was named Operation Neptune Spear, reflecting its sharp and focused nature. Months of preparation followed, involving detailed rehearsals using a full-scale replica of the compound. SEAL Team 6, the Navy's most elite counterterrorism unit, was chosen for the task, known for precision and daring raids in hostile environments. The stakes couldn't have been higher. One wrong move could cost lives, spark war with Pakistan, or let the world's most dangerous man slip away once again. But from posterity, we know that didn't happen.
After a firefight, they killed Osama bin Laden and took custody of his body.
What they do with
Bin Laden was dead, but not the organization. Want to understand the world better? Start with history and subscribe to our channel. Chapter 6, Aftermath. After the raid, Osama bin Laden's body was quickly flown to the USS Carl Vinson, an American aircraft carrier in the Arabian Sea. There, DNA tests confirmed with 99.9% certainty that the man killed was indeed bin Laden, ending years of speculation. While Americans across the country celebrated what they called justice for the 9/11 attacks, the death of bin Laden did not mark the end of the global fight against terrorism. Al-Qaeda, though weakened, survived, and new extremist groups like ISIS soon rose to fill power vacuums across the Middle East.
Which was funded heavily by Hillary Clinton
symbolized a moment of closure
and Barack
for many,
Obama.
But for the broader war on terror, it was just another chapter. The legacy remains complicated. Bin Laden was gone, but peace was still elusive. So, was this justice truly served, or was it simply a powerful symbol in a long ongoing conflict? Let us know in the comments below.
So this is really suspect by him, his barrel at sea. Y'all see that? They live screen Saddam Hussein and Muammar Gaddafi. And this man was a brutal dictator who took down the towers. Wouldn't you think the American people would wanted to see this execution, ladies and gentlemen? But listening to that old house nigga, the burial was at sea. Really? Let's get into the next one.
Last night, the United States brought the world's #1 terrorist leader to justice. Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi is dead. He was the founder and leader of ISIS, the most ruthless and violent terror organization anywhere in the world. The United States has been searching for Baghdadi for many years. Capturing or killing Baghdadi has been the top national security priority of my administration. U.S. Special Operations Forces executed a dangerous and daring nighttime raid in northwestern Syria and accomplished their mission in grand style. The U.S. personnel were incredible. I got to watch much of it. No personnel were lost in the operation, while a large number of Baghdadi's fighters and companions
were
killed with
unalived.
him. He died after running into a dead-end tunnel, whimpering and crying and screaming all the way. The compound had been cleared by this time, with people either surrendering or being shot and killed. 11 young children were moved out of the house and are uninjured. The only ones remaining were Baghdadi in the tunnel, and he had dragged 3 of his young children with him. They were led to certain death. He reached the end of the tunnel as our dogs chased him down. He ignited his vest, killing himself and the 3 children. His body was mutilated by the blast. The tunnel had caved in on it in addition. But test results gave certain, immediate, and totally positive identification. It was him. The thug who tried so hard to intimidate others spent his last moments
Begging,
in utter fear,
screaming, begging.
in total panic and dread, terrified of the American forces bearing down on him. We were in the compound for approximately 2 hours, and after the mission was accomplished, we took highly sensitive material and information from the raid, much having to do with ISIS, origins, future plans, things that we very much want. Baghdadi's demise demonstrates America's relentless pursuit of terrorist leaders and our commitment to the enduring and total defeat of ISIS and other terrorist organizations.
Good evening. Tonight, I can report to the American people and to the world that the United States has conducted an operation that killed Osama bin Laden, the leader of Al-Qaeda.
Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi is dead. He was the founder and leader of ISIS.
It was nearly 10 years ago that a bright September day was darkened by the worst attack on the American people in our history. The images of 9/11 are seared into our national memory.
Capturing or killing Baghdadi has been the top national security priority of my administration. U.S. Special Operations Forces executed a dangerous and daring nighttime raid. I got to watch much of it.
On September 11th, 2001, in our time of grief, the American people came together. On that day, no matter where we came from, what God we prayed to, or what race or ethnicity we were united as one American family.
He died after running into a dead-end tunnel, whimpering and crying and screaming all the way. The compound had been cleared by this time, with people either surrendering or being shot and killed. Baghdadi in the tunnel, and he had dragged 3 of his young children with him. They were led to certain death.
Today, at my direction, the United States launched a targeted operation against that compound. A small team of Americans carried out the operation with extraordinary courage and capability. No Americans were harmed. They took care to avoid civilian casualties. After a firefight, they killed Osama bin Laden and took custody of his body.
He ignited his vest, killing himself and the 3 children. His body was mutilated by the blast. The tunnel had caved in on it in addition. The thug who tried so hard to intimidate others spent his last moments in utter fear, in total panic and dread.
The death of bin Laden marks the most significant achievement to date in our nation's effort to defeat Al-Qaeda.
We were in the compound for approximately 2 hours. We took highly sensitive material and information.
Yet his death does not mark the end of our effort.
These savage monsters will not escape their fate
There's no doubt that Al-Qaeda will continue to pursue attacks against us. We must and we will remain vigilant at home and abroad. And we will remain vigilant at home and abroad. As we do, we must also reaffirm that the United States is not and never will be at war with Islam.
Baghdadi and the losers who worked for him, in some cases, they were very frightened puppies. In other cases, they were hardcore killers.
And on nights like this one, we can say to those families who have lost loved ones to Al-Qaeda's terror, justice has been done.
Baghdadi was vicious and violent, and he died in a vicious and violent way as a coward, running and crying. This raid was impeccable and could only have taken place with the acknowledgement and help of certain other nations and people.
Tonight, we give thanks to the countless intelligence and counterterrorism professionals who've worked tirelessly to achieve this outcome.
I want to thank the soldiers and sailors, airmen and Marines involved in last night's operation.
Let us remember that we can do these things not just because of wealth or power, but because of who we are. One nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. May God bless you. And may God bless the United States of America.
He died like a dog. He died like a coward. The world is now a much safer place. God bless America.
This is Berisha, a Syrian village just a few kilometers from the Turkish border. And this pile of rubble is what's left of the building that housed Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi. The hunt for the IS group leader took a new turn over the summer after one of his wives and a courier were arrested. They were interrogated by U.S. intelligence, who were able to establish that al-Baghdadi was hiding somewhere in Idlib province in northwestern Syria. U.S. military was then able to identify several houses that the terrorist leader used as shelter. One of the buildings belonged to a local al-Qaeda leader. That is where U.S. Special Forces were sent. Prior to this weekend, the operation had been canceled 3 times.
Well, the stars started lining up some time ago, and in the past couple weeks, week or so, the operational forces, which were one of several options available to the president, started rehearsing and practicing and doing what they would have to do on the objective.
On Saturday, 8 helicopters carrying Delta Force members took off from the Al-Assad base in Iraq. After an hour-long flight, they arrived in Berisha, but were quickly spotted and began sustaining heavy fire.
I opened the door and I saw a helicopter hovering around 15 meters above the ground and another one right behind it. There were no shots fired at first, and then suddenly there was gunfire and the helicopter began firing back.
Inside the house, Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi, along with several of his wives and children. The leader attempted to flee but ended up cornered in a tunnel. That's when he detonated his suicide vest, killing himself and 3 of his children. The IS group leader's identity was soon confirmed. His DNA had been collected by the U.S. Army when he was detained in an Iraqi prison in 2004. U.S. Special Forces spent 2 hours in the house collecting strategic data before flying back to Iraq. The building was then destroyed in an airstrike.
January 3rd, the United States launched a drone strike near the Baghdad International Airport in Iraq. It killed several Iraqi and Iranian military officials, including Iran's top commander named Qasem Soleimani. Moments later, Iran's supreme leader declared Soleimani a martyr and threatened severe revenge against the U.S. Over the next few days, hundreds of thousands of Iranians came out to mourn Soleimani's death. But Iran wasn't the only place where people took to the streets. There were demonstrations in Iraq, Syria, Lebanon, and Yemen. These are some of the countries where Soleimani commanded a network of powerful militias, which gave him and Iran extraordinary influence across the region. This network made him one of the most important people in Iran. It's also what got him killed. So how did Soleimani expand Iran's influence? And what happens to these militias after his death? 1979, a cleric named Ayatollah Khomeini led a popular movement that toppled Iran's monarch and established the Islamic Republic of Iran. This new regime wanted to export their revolution, and that threatened countries all over the Middle East. Iran was also the first Shia government that billed itself as the preeminent leader of the Muslim world. That especially threatened Iran's Sunni-dominated neighbors. The first one to act was Iraq. In 1980, dictator Saddam Hussein sent his army to invade Iran. Other countries that felt threatened by Iran supported him. The US sent some weapons to Iran, but mainly supported Iraq throughout the war, hoping to keep Iran's ambitions in check. The war carried on for 8 years and nearly 1 million died. During that time, Iran was devastated and surrounded by enemies. So it devised a strategy to spread its ideology and fight its enemies covertly at the same time. But it first needed a security force to find groups to partner with outside of Iran's borders. So in the 80s, it put together an elite unit of soldiers and spies called the Quds Force. They became part of Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, a branch of the military that answered directly to Iran.
Islamic, y'all hear that? Islamic. When y'all say, Allah said you shouldn't have weapons, well, look in these foreign countries. They're surrounded with weapons, goddammit. Mass destruction weapons.
Supreme leader. Next, it needed an opportunity to unleash this force, and it found one in Lebanon. In the 1970s, a civil war was raging in Lebanon. The US had sent troops as peacekeepers, but violence was spilling over into Israel. So in 1982, Israel invaded Lebanon. Several Lebanese militias fought back. Some of these militias were led by Shia clerics who had ideological ties to Iran. So Iran sent forces, millions of dollars, and tons of weapons to back their fight. They eventually merged into one powerful Shia militia called Hezbollah. They attacked Israeli soldiers in Lebanon and launched rockets over the border into Israel. Hezbollah even bombed the US embassy and barracks, killing 304 people. Eventually, Hezbollah succeeded. The US troops left Lebanon in 1984, and Israel pulled out in 2000. Iran's dual strategy had worked. It turned Hezbollah into a reliable proxy that could fight Israel and even the US on its behalf, without inciting conflict on its own borders. Iran had also found an effective way to export its ideology to Lebanon. So Iran's Quds Force started supporting proxy militias in Palestine and Iraq. As it built the foundation for a network, a charismatic soldier worked his way up the ranks. In 1998, Qasem Soleimani took command of the Quds Force, and within a few years, he had an opportunity to firmly establish Iran's influence in Iraq. In 2003, the US invaded and toppled Saddam Hussein and his Sunni-dominated regime. This created a power vacuum in Iraq, which was quickly filled by Shias. Soleimani used this opportunity to continue to back Shia militias here, growing his network into a powerful force that fought against the US and other Iraqis. It turned into one of the most violent periods in Iraq's troubled history. Thousands of civilians died, many at the hands of Soleimani's Iraqi militias. But eventually, a Shia-dominated government took control of Iraq. Soleimani had managed to solidify Iran's influence in Iraq when another opportunity arose, this time in Syria. In 2011, protests in Syria turned into a civil war, which threatened to overthrow dictator Bashar al-Assad. Soleimani orchestrated his network of proxies to work together to defend Assad. He called in Hezbollah fighters from Lebanon, Shia militias from Iraq, and even soldiers from Iran. He also created 2 new militias with Afghan and Pakistani fighters. All these groups fought alongside the Syrian army to keep Assad in power. This intensified a war that eventually killed more than 500,000 people, mostly civilians, and displaced more than 11 million. But Assad survived. Soleimani was successfully exploiting conflicts to advance Iran's interests across the region, and it was making him a very popular figure in Iran. He became arguably the second most important person in the country. More conflicts gave Iran more opportunities. When ISIS sparked another war in Iraq, Soleimani again called on his network to defend Iraq and keep ISIS away from Iran. By now, he had unprecedented influence and continued to command Shia militias in Iraq directly, even after they were officially folded into Iraq's military. When a civil war erupted in Yemen, Iran threw its support behind the rebel group. Now, instead of being surrounded by enemies, Iran had them surrounded. Soleimani empowered a vast array of militias across the Middle East. Many of them are excessively violent and have killed thousands. Many are designated terrorist organizations by the US and EU. And many are corrupt. Lebanese Hezbollah and the Iraqi Shia militias, for instance, are the targets of mass protests in those countries, and they're putting down the protests with more violence. But to Iran and its supporters, Soleimani is a hero. He helped build a web of militias that not only keeps Iran's enemies in check, but also provides a pipeline for the Islamic ideology that Iran wanted to see in the far corners of the Middle East. It's why Iran's supreme leader immediately called Soleimani a martyr, and also declared that his efforts and path won't be stopped after his killing. So even though its commander is gone, the network remains intact.
Soleimani was the commander of the Quds Force, a unit of Iran's Revolutionary Guard responsible for foreign operations. And he was also considered to be the second most powerful man in Iran, behind the country's supreme leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei. The news of his death made official by Iran's state TV. A 3-day mourning period was announced, and Iran vowed revenge, as US President Donald Trump stood by his decision with this claim.
Last night, at my direction, the United States military executed a flawless strike that terminated the terrorist ringleader responsible for gravely wounding and murdering thousands and thousands of people and hundreds at least of Americans. Qasem Soleimani has been killed, and his bloody rampage is now forever gone.
For Ayatollah Khamenei, Soleimani was a trusted confidant, a member of his inner circle, and a friend for more than 30 years. Almost 12 months on, the commander-in-chief of Iran's armed forces says he's not done avenging Soleimani's death.
See, now you heard that, right?
Whenever it's possible, we will take revenge. We will take revenge on those who ordered Soleimani's assassination and the ones who carried out that assassination.
Just hours after Soleimani's body was laid to rest in his hometown of Kerman, on January 7th, the Revolutionary Guard launched 13 missiles at the US base Ain al-Assad in Iraq. No Americans were killed, but tensions increased. Iran was on high alert and accidentally shot down a Ukrainian airline passenger plane, killing all 176 people on board. While the United States said they were not seeking regime change in Iran, Trump's decision to kill Qasem Soleimani had far-reaching repercussions. Feared by his enemies inside Iran, Soleimani had for years been one of the most popular national figures in the country. The international face of Iranian resistance to American pressure, he remained largely untouched by the diminishing popularity of the country's elected government. His death prompted calls for the expulsion of US troops from the Middle East by Iranian officials, as well as Iranian-backed groups in Iraq, and it's a demand which still stands a year later.
Officials here called Soleimani's assassination a new chapter in the history of the Middle East. While many countries condemn the act, no one has actually been held accountable, despite efforts by Iran to prosecute US President Donald Trump through Interpol.
We're on the brink of a new kind of major conflict in the Middle East. We'll likely see Iran ramping up its nuclear enrichment in the coming days, putting an extremely dangerous problem that our administration had solved and put on the back burner back on the table. I hope the administration, I pray the administration has thought through the second and third order consequences of what they have chosen.
Last year, Labor frontbencher Ed Husic, former Labor Foreign Minister Bob Carr, and Lord Mayor of Sydney Clover Moore were pictured next to a photo of the Ayatollah as it was carried across the Harbour Bridge. Just remember that. And now, Labor's proven once again that it's on the wrong side of humanity and the wrong side of history. Overnight, that same dictator that they were pictured with, the supreme leader of Iran, Ali Khamenei, was killed in US-Israeli airstrikes. Now, this is a man responsible for the mass murder of his own citizens, was a sponsor of terror. His regime supported Houthis, Hezbollah and militias in Iraq and Syria.
A straight tyrant. That's all he was. A tyrant.
The regime was responsible for 2 anti-Semitic attacks in Australia, including the firebombing of a Melbourne synagogue. And this brutal dictator has been taken out. Here was that moment confirmed by Iranian state media.
To the noble and proud people of Iran, with ultimate grief and sorrow, this is to inform you that following the barbaric attack by the criminal governments of America and the evil Zionist regime, the true example of faith, jihad and resistance, Supreme Leader of the Revolutionary Guard Ayatollah Khamenei achieved the blessing of martyrdom.
Ding dong, the tyrant is gone. Here is the Ayatollah's residence in Tehran, up in smokes. His body was found surrounded by rubble and riddled with shrapnel wounds. The mullahs, so this is his successors, and members of his own family have also been killed. As airstrikes rang out, Donald Trump delivered one of the most important speeches in presidential history.
Finally, to the great proud people of Iran, I say tonight that the hour of your freedom is at hand. Stay sheltered, don't leave your home. It's very dangerous outside. Bombs will be dropping everywhere. When we are finished, take over your government. It will be yours to take. This will be probably your only chance for generations. For many years, you have asked for America's help, but you never got it. No president was willing to do what I am willing to do tonight. Now you have a president who is giving you what you want. So let's see how you respond. America is backing you with overwhelming strength and devastating force. Now is the time to seize control of your destiny and to unleash the prosperous and glorious future that is close within your reach.
This is a hugely significant moment in modern world history. Iran has waited 47 years for this.
47
no leader
years.
has had the courage of Donald
God
Trump,
damn it.
no leader, to take
47
on a brutal dictatorship
years.
head on and cut off the head of the snake. Other than Benjamin Netanyahu, who has fought terror while being abandoned by so-called allies in the West, including Australia.
We hit out at the tyrant Khamenei. For 3 decades, he has been sending terror with proxies and has made his people miserable and continue talking about the extermination of the state of Israel. This plan and program no longer exists. This tyrant no longer exists.
And he and Donald Trump have done it. The president said in a statement, Khamenei, one of the most evil people in history, is dead. He was unable to avoid our intelligence and highly sophisticated tracking systems, and working closely with Israel, there was not a thing he or the other leaders that have been killed along with him could do. This is the single greatest chance for the Iranian people to take their country back. And that news was met with celebrations across Iran.
Look, they celebrating. They celebrating across Iran, but back here in the States, these Dixiecrats are upset. Make it make sense, y'all. The Iranians are celebrating the death, and these Dixiecrats is in their feelings. I mean, they got their country back, goddammit.
The Ayatollah's statue has been torn down.
Look, tear it down like they did Saddam. Look, boom. The people's happy. But you listen to these niggas back here in the States. It's a problem.
And Iranian women are removing their hijabs and
Look at that.
dancing in the middle of Tehran.
Look. They taking their headgear off dancing, know what I mean? Yeah, they happy that motherfucker dead. You're underlive, y'all. Look at them taking their headgear off and everything. Partying. These Islamic states, right?
What a moment. Back home, as I said, Labor was back on the wrong side of history.
Right.
All that Foreign Minister Penny Wong could muster up today was a call for de-escalation.
We don't want to see this escalate into a wider regional conflict.
They partying over there in Iran, y'all. Iranians partying.
As others have.
Like it's 1999. God damn it.
I would say to Australians,
these niggas over here in the States, these Dixiecrats mad. More madder than them. That's crazy, man. They did that shit before, though.
De-escalation? Dialogue and diplomacy? Really? What planet does she live on? I mean, there are Iranians celebrating this historic moment in the streets.
Facts.
They wanted this.
They wanted that.
They are praying that this means a genuine
47 years they prayed for
under
this.
a murderous regime since the Islamic Revolution in 1979.
Oh,
a regime that has murdered tens of thousands of people, adopted a shoot-to-kill policy on protesters in recent weeks, literally shooting them dead in the streets. Iran has not given up its nuclear weapons program. It continues to persist with it, which of course poses a threat to the
Thanks
world.
to who?
And just like she did after
President Donald Trump
1,200 Jews on
and
October
the Israel
7th,
president.
the foreign minister's first instinct is dialogue and diplomacy. I mean, the same bizarre instinct that she had after the US took out an Iran nuclear facility in June last year.
Right, that's what it
directly
was.
put to the Iranian foreign minister.
That's what it was.
We are saying to you, exercise restraint, return to diplomacy. And
These are
dialogue,
Americans, y'all.
because continuing to escalate this
Foreign Affairs
has
Minister
consequences for
Penny Wong.
of the region, and I think that is a
Penny Wong, sit your ass down.
that so many countries in the world are putting to not only the Iranians but also to the Israelis.
And remember, Labor chose not to stand with the US for the first 24 hours after that strike on Iran last year. Australia did not support its number one ally who tried to destroy terror in Iran. And Australia went against the US in recognising a Palestinian state. I mean, Labor lives in a delusional la-la land where they think that negotiations and discussions with tyrants and terrorists who have proved time and time again that they cannot be trusted is somehow key to solving problems. Well, thank goodness the US ignored Penny Wong. And thank goodness Benjamin Netanyahu ignored Penny Wong. The Prime Minister talked tough today, putting him at odds with his own Foreign Minister.
Australia stands with the brave people of Iran in their struggle against what is an oppressive regime. Ayatollah Khamenei was responsible for the regime's ballistic missile and nuclear program, support for armed proxies, and its brutal acts of violence and intimidation against its own people. This claimed countless lives in Iran, but also internationally. He was responsible for orchestrating attacks on Australian soil. His passing will not be mourned.
Look, this is all well and good now, but the Prime Minister only talks tough after someone else has done the hard work for him. I mean, you can't condemn the Iranian regime and support Palestine at the same time, especially after the last 2.5 years where he's betrayed our values for votes, presided over the decay of social cohesion in Australia, led by rampant anti-Semitism and hate at the hands of radical Islamists, while he and Penny told us that we're a tolerant nation. Well, where has that tolerance got us? Nowhere. I mean, the US and Israel were brave enough to take tolerance into their own hands overnight. And Albo saying he loves to stand with things. I mean, he loves that phrase, but he actually never follows through. He said he stood with Australian Jews as they lived in fear and continue to do so. He said he stood with us as we watched in horror while our national monuments were hijacked by those who hate us. He said he stood with Australia during the Bondi terror attack, but could not even mutter the words radical Islam until about a month later. He certainly stands around a lot, doesn't he? And yet he had nothing to say when one of his own MPs was pictured on the Harbour Bridge next to a portrait of a now dead terrorist. Who can believe a word this Prime Minister says? Now, today marks a pivotal moment in the deaths of Islamic terrorists. Khamenei and his mullahs, Hezbollah's longtime leader, and one of its
eliminated.
founders, Hassan Nasrallah, Hamas leader Yahya Sinwar, and countless other top
Or
military
unalive,
and command leaders of terror, all killed by the US and or Israel. And it all started since October 7, 2023, when Israel fought for its right to survive and against terror, and then once Donald Trump was re-elected, acting on his mandate to stop wars. Long may strong leaders like Trump and Netanyahu ignore the ridiculous statements and naivety from Penny Wong and Labor. This is what Iran looked like before the revolution. And look, there's a long way to go, and I'll get into what this means and what happens now with my guests throughout the show. But Donald Trump has taken a huge political gamble in trying to restore Iran to its former glory. Now, if it doesn't work, especially in a mid-year term, it could be disastrous for his foreign policy credentials and also among his MAGA base, many of whom do not want a war. But if it goes to plan, then there is no doubt that this is one of the greatest foreign policy accomplishments in modern history.
Facts.